Poland is not unlike the West. In many ways, we are unfortunately similar. This is the effect of political heating. Where the West is heating up its ideas, consequences, and functions, these spill over to its neighboring countries. This concept can be used for almost anything, from weapons trafficking to the spread of ideas and societal norms. Some consider this as merely an economic effect that more affluent countries affect less affluent ones. However, this fails to explain how seemingly minor nations can influence far larger and more powerful nations and states. The West has been changing violently, and thus it has produced a huge amount of political, cultural, and economic heat. This then spills over to its neighbors. It is most evident by the sheer fact that the west of Poland has far more liberal ideas than the south or east of Poland. This is due to contact with the far more progressive Germany, which is producing massive excess of ideological heat. Comparatively, the East is rather cool politically, and thus far more conservative. This is a result of eternal revolution of the left, that is, catalyzed by democracy. While Poland is a democratic country, we too will suffer its effects. In fact, we already are. I am here today to explain the dire situation Poland is in currently, and how we are not at all a far-right bastion that the media makes us out to be. First, I would like to address the elephant in the room. Poland's government is not conservative, nor right-wing. Not at all. PiS itself is rather left-wing, and I am not talking about economics, but their approach to societal issues, and the EU. PiS, albeit its POSOs have been talking a hard talk, but really in fact passing nearly every bill offhand to meet EU regulations. It has also been reluctant to actually produce any anti-EU propaganda and statements, and even has had cases where its party members go and tattle to the EU. This is the polar opposite of what the EU says the government is doing. In fact, the government's narrative has reversed and is now about reforming the EU, considering it a necessary project, and that outside of it, we will be severely disadvantaged, ergo taking up all the talking points of the far left that have been produced over the past decade. PiS also has had a strange habit of meeting with opposition leaders during dinner parties and laughing together. It is not uncommon to see party members in flux between each party depending on who is in power. Ideologically, however, they differ very little. This is because actions speak louder than words. PiS, additionally burdened by the issue of importing massive swaths of US occupational forces, who will do nothing to protect us and are strategically unviable, considered we are spending almost half of our military budget on their equipment, such as the Patriot missiles that we don't even have the codes to and thus cannot use, or how we bought Leopard tanks from Germany without ammunition or any patent to produce parts for said tanks. Meaning half of them, if not more, are stuck in hangars and garages as basically spare parts kits when something inevitably fails. Our military has been suffering. The Territorial Defense Force that I was contemplating joining has instead ground to a near halt. They are crawling forward but still severely retarded in their fighting capacity. Our operative forces are understaffed, undersupplied, and are working with old equipment. We call it zabetonowane. Basically, these structures are calcified. It is also selling our companies in favor of Western companies with its new anti-epidemic shield program, which offers help to large corporations and foreign investors, but generally shafts our own. PiS is a vassal party. To whom? To the USA, of course. Mosbacher says, "Peace do." Mosbacher gives us a little to something to work on. We work on it. We should pay millions upon millions for US troops and equipment? Yes, absolutely, right away. What, you mean import JP Morgan? Of course! Russia bad, right on it. Supply Ukraine? No problem. This is a very short list, but anything the USA demands of us, including the infamous Middle East Summit that we hosted, was a vassal. Well, demonstrates we are a vassal of the USA. This does not abdicate PO, of course, because when PO was in power with Tusk, etc., we were working heavily as a vassal of Germany. And it is obvious in how these countries relate to these other countries. So Poland relates to Germany, how we are in fact vassals of Germany. Currently, we are still a neo-colony of Germany and USA.
What may seem like a conservative country is in fact not so conservative. Many people are swayed by the growing pressure of the left. Most people, especially young people now, are turning to LGBT and accepting it fully. The millennial generation of Poland is staunchly left. The left has such social dominance that it is illegal to say in Poland during a march or to have a banner that says, "Poland for the Poles, you can only be born Polish." Why? Well, it turns out our constitution has anti-racism clauses, an anti-fascism clause. That is used to berate any nationalist right-wing sentiment. The left is so socially dominant that to say you can only be born Polish or that X foreign man is not Polish is in fact unacceptable and deeply racist. I honestly don't care. I'll affirm my right to exist. But it puts me at a massive disadvantage socially, not to mention that higher education is totally dominated by the left. Antifa functions regularly and freely in Poland, in higher unis, right-wingers not so much. Hell, a man called Mr. Smuniewski was now famously suspended his student duties, just as he was about to write his master's thesis because he was present at a meeting the left deemed fascistic. This is the University of Warsaw, by the way. Another woman, a social scientist who dared assert that the founding block of society in modern days considered man, woman, and child as a definition of family, was forced to resign for the simple statement during a lecture due to LGBT groups pressuring her. LGBT also tried to organize Drag Queen Story Hour or get trans involved in teaching kids, for example, CPR. Harmless, right? Not so much. This came on the back of them pushing intensely sex education and preventing religious education, convincing parents that religious education ought to be missed out on in favor of sex ed, because it's more progressive, modern, and less medieval and closed-minded. And it's working. Less children attend religious educations, more attend more liberal education. Higher education is full of leftists, and I must be honest, I have an easier time speaking with an Arab on topics than I do with fellow Poles. It's rare to meet a conservative Poles in higher education. Very hard.
So mass immigration, who hasn't experienced it? Poland? Of course not. How could we skip out on mass immigration? Instead of third worlders, we get Ukrainians. Now, this isn't to say Ukrainians are bad people. The issue is, however, that this is immigration we are talking about. When a group migrates and is invited en masse, it needs to have certain conditions met. To keep them here, they need to feel comfortable, and to promote the Wielopolak, or the Wielopolak/Jagiellońska Polska ideal, the natives must be repressed in order to make more identities possible in the same space. I've written about this, so I won't go on about this. What is then Polska Jagiellońska? Well, it is a period in Poland's history when Poland became the Commonwealth under the Lithuanian king, Władysław Jagiełła. This marks a period of Polish expansion, but also marks the end of Polish rule over Polish lands. Poland becomes increasingly tolerant, diverse, and subsequently implodes and is then taken apart by its neighbors. The Wielopolak refers to a Pole who is who is Polish culturally, while ignoring the fact that culture is tied to the people and so to blood. It is typical conservative trife. To continue, Ukrainians arrive, and of course, with their growing numbers, crime arrives. Poles report the crimes. Poles are accused of discrimination and forced to apologize and pay a fine for said discrimination and racism. Thus, Poles must suffer in silence. The same goes for third world immigrants that aren't even registered into the crime statistics. Not too long ago in Warsaw, there was an attack by an Arab on police officers with a knife. The man, I suspect, was deported, but the media did not pursue the case. Warsaw is officially, as you can expect, now multi-quality. Unis have a hard-on for foreign students and prefer them because they pay as compared to Polish students. Polish girls love foreigners, unfortunately. The more exotic, the better. Why? Because magazines say that Arabs make better husbands than the deadbeat Pole. Children are literally seen as a commodity by some women who simply want the most hip-looking mixed kid. This is something I will describe in a future video as a problem of owning kids versus having kids. So, mass immigration is alive and well into Poland. The topic has been dropped by the media since we have plenty of drama to go around. And people are so used to being abused they don't seem to care anymore. This may be in part due to government TV series that push this pro-diversity propaganda. Patients who are LGBT, parents who refuse to forgive them, black men who pass out during a race and turn out to be Polish, in that they speak Polish and claim to be, while the racist nationalists are told they are stupid. and then leftists and right-wing activists are told by war veterans to come together and find common ground. Mind you, this is all in peace television. This is public television, financed from the public's money from a supposedly conservative government. LGBT-free zones? Of course not. As mentioned before, it is alive and well. Only certain regions have capacity to forbid LGBT practices, and the main region that it is Krakow. Thanks to, of course, the Archbishop of Krakow. Now, there is some confusion about this. LGBT-free zones do not, in fact, mean that there is a social norm about LGBT that is anti-LGBT. In fact, it is quite the opposite. While socially it is accepted, LGBT is identified as an ideology that stems from Marxism or some form of communism. And thus, the Archbishop's quote, Kiedyś mieliśmy czerwoną zarazę, dzisiaj mamy tęczową zarazę. So once we had the red disease, now we have the rainbow disease. It's a famous quote that has gone around. ABC Media has done an interview with him, and he's completely right when he says this. However, this is not a social norm of perception of LGBT. Most people think of LGBT as harmed by society in some way, and that maybe we shouldn't be so mean and bad to them. The only difference is that local governments, regional governments, powiaty, etc., województwa, are able to ban the teaching of sex education or LGBT classes and promotion of the ideology. It is a great step forward, however, it is not the final step forward. There is no top-down from the government forbidding of this. There was a bill, however, I do not believe it ever passed. This is similar to what we see when we talk about the abortion bills. Currently, eugenic abortion in Poland is legal. All you need to do is find a doctor that is willing to do it, and generally you can get any child aborted for basically whatever reason, as long as you have a doctor, some kind of gynecologist that will diagnose the child with, say, Down syndrome or some other major disease, and thus the child will be viable to be removed, to be killed. There is also many organizations in Poland, especially feminist organizations that run online on YouTube, or even doctors that are part of these organizations that provide, illegally mind you, day after pills, or they give you advice on how to get an abortion, where to go, which clinics, which doctors, etc. The government's not doing anything against this. This is why the facade of the government, this conservative facade, falls apart, and yet the state propaganda has people completely entranced. In Poland, people do want a far-right, a truly far-right government, but they can't get it. Poland is not right-wing bastion. In fact, we cannot be called right-wing at all. Our nationalist party, Ruch Narodowy, has gone into coalition with the libertarians and liberals, who in reality don't differ much at all from the left. I believe this is something most people have realized. This has caused the party to take a sharp liberal turn, as the Liberal Party is the majority in the party. And this causes Konfederacja to seem like a typical conservative party from the US, kind of like Turning Point USA in a way. But the sheer fact that they are seen as far-right shows you just how far left politics has shifted in Poland. The reason I'm making this video is because Poles are duped into thinking that we are safe in Poland by foreign media. Trust in media here is rather low, so that if the left criticizes us and leftist journalists, and the West accuses us of being right-wing, then we must be right-wing. In fact, all is not well. This tactic of duping the Polish population has gone on for far too long, and I cannot bear it anymore. I must, as a patriot, as a nationalist, as a Pole, spread the word. Poland is not well. We are falling just like the West, merely at a slower rate, but failing all the same. This West is heating us up, and like a steel bar, when we get hot at one end, we will eventually get hot at the other. Sława, and God bless you guys.